If you knew what your true yes was and what your true no was in all areas of your life, would you be able to choose faster and easier? What futures would those choices create? Everyone is capable of connecting to their bodies in a way to have more exuberant and joyful living now and in the future. Now, here is your host of Choosing a Different Future with Siris.
Hi, welcome everyone. Welcome. I'm Siris Raquel Rivas-Verdejo. You're here for Choosing a Different Future with Siris. And I'm super excited for this conversation today. Thank you to everyone that has been messaging me with just beautiful feedback. All of our new listeners, a lot of new listeners, longtime listeners as well. You were following us on all these different platforms. Remember, we're on TV, we're on the podcast, all these different platforms, 250. So make sure to explore and find us on all of them. Today's topic is having our fantastical voice. Siris Rivas, in case I'm new to you, I'm a body relationship coach. And what that means is I communicate with bodies. I communicate with them in a way that empowers the people to communicate with their own bodies better. And then if they would like, they can connect with other bodies in their lives, like their kids, and make sure that they know, are they happy? Are they sad? Are they hungry? Before they maybe even say it. Maybe their partners, are they horny? Are they grumpy? Are they having a stress at work right now? Maybe I should send them a little care package. And then I'm also a family and child coach, and it doesn't matter what type of family you have. I've worked with so many different kinds, from blended to alternative to poly and open families to nuclear families. Families are evolving and changing and in so many different ways. And it's been really lovely to be able to have families know that they are awesome and that they know more than they realize, and to be able to look at each person's strengths and gifts so that everyone in the family can thrive. And then last but not least, I'm the creator of the Living and Dying Body Process, which is a body process that's particularly great for people who are healers, givers, those that are the ones you call in a crisis, where maybe sometimes we're so busy giving that we're not caring for ourselves. And so for those that would really like to have exuberant living, or you're really lit up about your life, while you're also knowing that you're going to be on call or caring for other people, then this body process is for you. And it all ties in together with this theme for today, that I'm super excited about. The thing is that a fantastical voice is going to play into families. It plays into how we talk about our bodies. It plays into how we create our lives. And then also our relationships. And we have an upcoming event. I think I mentioned it last call, but definitely don't want you to forget this. This upcoming Monday, August 1st, our first call for the Exuberantly You in Relationships is starting. And the first 2 calls in this 8-part series are complimentary. So you can test it out, see what it creates for you, play around with the exercises, get the audio replays, and then see if you'd like to continue with the rest of the series. I don't know why you wouldn't continue with the rest of the series, because we're definitely going to be digging in deep. We're going to have a lot of exuberant living and make sure that you're actually joyful and communicating your way within your relationships, whatever the relationships that you have. The 2 first calls are about setting the stage. So we're going to be identifying and clearing limiting patterns. We're going to be looking at anywhere that you're unconsciously using other people's points of views and perspective to create your relationships. And then the second call is going to be about body awareness, connecting with your vibrancy and making sure that you're staying really juicy and happy and lit up and present with your body in your relationships. We all know people, and maybe you're one of them. I know I've been that person sometimes, where I wasn't as connected with my body. Maybe I was a little distracted in some of my relationships. And what if you could actually be really present and with your body and partner with it so that you can have relationships that work for you and nurture you? So the nurturing piece is going to be part of what we're doing moving forward. Some of you have been asking me questions about the awakening classes. We just had this great one in July, and we have 3 more scheduled. There's one in September. The theme is opening the doors to greater living. We have one in November. That's gratitude for the home within. You're creating a home within your body. I love that. And I love Thanksgiving, and that's in November too. So lots of gratitude. And then there's January, where we're starting the new year, setting the tone for the year is the theme for that one. And all the information for the Exuberantly You in relationships is at empoweringlightlanguage.com/exuberantlyu. And all of the information about the awakening classes, where you learn the living and dying body process and get a bunch of other tools, that's at empoweringlight.com, the empoweringlightlanguage.com/living and dying. Because we want to make sure that we're actually living our ways, that we're actually connecting with our bodies and staying present with that, and talking about the seen and unseen. And this is what's really powerful about Fantastical Voice. So I'm going to read the description of what we're going to talk about today, and then we're going to get into this. So having our fantastical voice, what would it be like for us to have our fantastical voice? Let's just take a moment and see what comes up with that. It may be a certain energy, right? What would it create for us and for the world if we had our fantastical voice? So when we have our own unique voice, it changes everything. Discerning between truth and lies is faster and easier. If we'd like to be truly seen and truly heard, expressing ourselves effectively in a way that honors and respects us and others, it increases the chances of that exponentially, having your fantastical voice. So the walls to knowing ourselves come tumbling down, and we can more clearly know what we desire. And this is important, take action to create it. Language, communication, and self-expression are key to building a life that is congruent with what we have been longing for. So today we're going to be shining a light on where we've been hiding and shutting ourselves down so that we can recognize the value of what we bring to our lives and to the world. And, I was asking questions today and yesterday and the day before a little bit, because for those of you that create content, maybe you have your own podcast, maybe you teach classes, the energy of what you're going to do, the class, the podcast, whatever it is, shows up sometimes days, sometimes weeks before you're actually there. And with Fantastical Voice, their journey with it started many years ago, back in 2018, 2019. And I was speaking with a good friend, and we were creating a group together. And this word of fantastical came up. And what that means, and we write fantastical with a PH specifically because it's phantom, which is the things that are seen and unseen, and the hidden pieces of you as well. And then fantastic, because you want to be fantastic with this. You want to be really like, oh, I'm here. I get to do this. Oh my gosh. And then all of you. So phantom, that's the fan, fantastic in the middle, and then all at the end. Fantastical comes from those three big components. And when you have your fantastical voice, you really get to, be so kind to you, maybe more kind than you've ever been, because you don't just rely on what people tell you outwardly. You don't just rely on what you see, the evidence. You actually tap into these hidden realms, these energies, these things that so many people aren't willing to speak about, but that hopefully over the course of you listening to this and tapping into the energy of this and connecting with your body, you'll start to notice where you have a fantastical voice and where you're not yet, or where you could maybe benefit from a little bit more practice with it. So I spoke about what fantastical is. Now, what's fantastical voice? Right? Because we're going to have our fantastical voice as we talk about these different things over the course of this episode today. And I'm going to use my life experience to illustrate some things because I didn't always have a fantastical voice. I'm still developing my fantastical voice. There's still new ways that it's showing up daily. And when I speak about fantastical voice, I'm looking at, well, how do I use my voice, my presence, my energy to communicate with myself and also other bodies and the seen and unseen? How am I picking up on how someone's feeling, what someone's thinking, what's possible with their bodies in all these different areas of my life? And so having a fantastical voice impacts everything. All right. And I went from someone who had very poor self-esteem, from someone who was in chronic pain, who had anxiety and depression, who was sick all the time for like 10, 15 years. Like you wouldn't have recognized me at all. I was hunched over. Sometimes my hands were gnarled from pain in my hands. I would all of a sudden drop down to my knees because my knees hurt so bad or my back was hurting me or all these different things. And then the relationships what I was choosing were perfect for the amount I was willing to receive at the time. Okay, I'm going to say that again. The relationships I was choosing for a very long time, and this is even right now, the relationships that I have right now are perfect for how much I'm willing to receive now. It just so happens that I'm willing to receive a lot more now than before. And we're all flexing our muscles for receiving more of ourselves, more ideas, inspiration, more awareness, judgment without resistance and point of view. I was not willing to do that for a very, very long time. And a lot of people come to me and they say, oh, Siris, will you speak all these different places? You have all these friends. You feel like you can talk to anybody at any time about anything. And, you ask for things, you stand up for people. I couldn't do that. And here's the thing. I could do that most of the time now. There are still moments where I catch myself and I'm like, ooh, this is really uncomfortable. Ooh, I'm not so sure if I should say something right now. And I question it. I ask some questions. I connect with my body. I'm still developing that. I've come a long way. Now, what a lot of people don't see when they are interacting with me now is that journey, is the fact that when I was in middle school at 7th grade, I was coming home crying every single day. I was not advocating for myself. I was not, this walking voice for the marginalized that I am now. We're all got to get there when we get there, and it's about taking these different action steps. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to talk to you about where I started, and I'm going to give you some of the tips that I use, given to me by amazing mentors, by some family members, by different books that I've read and classes that I've taken. And I'm going to try to see where you have your fantastical voice and where it may need a little bit more support. So as you're listening to these different tips and ideas, be aware of your body, connect with your body. Notice that what we talked about in our last discussion about how we need to connect with our bodies in the talking about the birds and the bees, the last episode that we did. And then you'll know very clearly what are the things that are relevant to you and which ones are not. Okay. So it's time for our first break of the show. When we return, we will discuss all these different ways that you can have your fantastical voice. You're listening to Choosing a Different Future with Siris, with myself, Siris, on the Inspired Choices Network. When we return, we will continue to discuss having our fantastical voice. We will be right back.
Most people haven't been taught how to listen and partner with their bodies in order to create lives that include clarity, pleasure, ease, and connection. Tuning in to Choosing a Different Future with Siris, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and resources on how to use your awareness of bodies and energy to your advantage. Siris is a family and child coach and therapeutic energy worker who will guide you to get clear and acknowledge what's brilliant, magical, and a gift about you.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Choosing a Different Future show with Siris. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. Connect with Siris through her website, empoweringlightlanguage.com, or send an email to empoweringlightlanguage@gmail.com. Now, back to the program.
All right, welcome back, everyone. I am Siris Raquel Rivas-Verdejo on Choosing a Different Future with Siris. And today our topic is having our fantastical voice. So before we went to a break, we were talking about how for many of us, we may put certain people on a pedestal. We might have some misconceptions about what it's taken for them to actually have their voice in the world and for them to show up the way that they show up. And even if you have your fantastical voice your way, that doesn't mean that you don't have insecurity sometimes, that you don't have deep fear or doubt that comes up. You just are supposed to use your fantastical voice, including how you talk to yourself, to move through those sticky, heavy moments faster and easier. I have great news before I forget. We now, instead of 250 platforms, we now have 450 platforms that this podcast is on and that this show is on. We added on 200 additional TV media platforms this week. So I haven't quite assimilated this news. Thank you to the group in Inspired Choices Network for reminding me. So huge. And then please don't forget to join us also in the ICN app, the Inspired Choices Network app, where you can find us through there, listen to the show, and also listen to a lot of the other great podcasts that we have and shows. There's a lot of wonderful shows on this network. So misconceptions. So let's say you have someone that you know who lacks confidence or self-esteem. I have a parent right now that just booked my coaching, my family and child coaching, because she wants me to work with her daughter who's in second, third grade, for her to have her voice, for her to feel more confident. And that's not a small thing, we're really planting the seeds. For those of you that know about elements of living, we're being star seeds, right? With this child in this moment. It's such a pivotal time. Every time can be a pivotal time, but I'm just so honored that this parent asked me to help. And when I think about this, I was like, wow, I'm actually in a place in my life where I can inspire a young person and maybe speak to my inner child and the person that I was at that age that was not confident. I remember that I would be bullied in middle school, basically walking through a gauntlet of people saying horrible things, like as I was walking through the hallways, rumors that were spread about me that were not true by a boyfriend at the time, an ex-boyfriend. I was already dating at like 12 years old. And so I had just gotten dumped by my boyfriend, and he spread all these rumors about me, and the people believed him and were just saying all these things about me while I was walking through the hallways anytime I was changing classes. And I would come home crying, and my mom, and I thank my mom every day for this, because I still use this. She gave me a couple tips. She said, make sure that you're walking tall, that you have your shoulders back, right? Your chin up, and do not let them see you cry. Do not let them think that they've gotten to you and that they're winning. And it's not that you won't cry. You're going to go to the bathroom. You have your your 2-minute timer, because you're in between classes, so you don't have as much time. Set your 2-minute timer, cry and get it all out. Wash your face, put your lip balm on, and get back to class. And then after school, the same thing. I would go through all my classes. They would do whatever they were going to do. I had my head held up high. I got home, looked at her. She was like, yep. And then I would go and I would set my 5-minute timer. I got a whole 5 minutes, and I would cry and I would cry and I would get it all out. And I wouldn't try to hold it in, because that was another thing I was trying to do before these tips. And that was creating havoc in my body. And so I would cry and cry, and then the timer would go, and I would wash my face, and I would put my cream on, and I would put my lip balm on. I was obsessed with lip balm. And then I would go and like draw, and I would go and write, and I would go and play tennis or play a board game with my siblings or something. And I would get back to living. The other thing that was super impactful during this time, and I see the comments in the chat, yes, tears are super healing, was the fact that she also gave me this Lisa Frank. I don't know how many of you remember Lisa Frank, where she did all her artwork in like rainbow colors. I love everything rainbow. Like if I could wear the rainbow every day, I would. I love it. And so she gave me this rainbow gratitude journal. It had a little like clip on it, a little fold over closure. And I would open it up and I would write what I was grateful for. And it would start to, over time, eclipse and take over and be a lot stronger than all the things that I was upset about. Like, oh, I'm doing really well in my classes. Oh, I had some good friends that weren't bullies, you know. And the more I was that vibration and energy of gratitude, and I kept not giving in to these bullies, and they were relentless for a while. It was bad. I didn't have it be so impactful to me. It built up my confidence, and I was able to be like, okay, in the midst of this onslaught, because it was an onslaught, I'm really not doing it justice. I could still be me. I could still find some joy in there, the little sliver of it. And then it got bigger and bigger and bigger, with actually doing the things that brought me joy and focusing on the people that weren't that, you know? So these little actions like that, these little pivot moments and things were what really helped. And making sure that who I chose to hang out with moving forward were people that were going to have my back, were my friends that I could confide in and be really vulnerable with. So the other thing too, with building up confidence, and I'm really curious because for each person, it's a little bit different. It may be your confidence with how you speak. It may be your confidence for how you dress yourself. These are all things about how you show up in the world. Maybe it's your posture, how you move in space, your awareness of your body in space, which is called proprioception. And like wondering, okay, how is it that I can use this body of mine to navigate this world, given all the things that I'm aware of and all the people that I'm interacting with? And for me, as much as I have a lot more ease than most with communicating now, I remember I did, when it came to interpersonal one-on-one, I could go up and say hey to a new friend at the beach when I was a very little kid and make a new friend for the beach day and then go home and be fine. But when it came to public speaking, especially public speaking to something that was like important to me, that I really valued, was very, very hard. Like to this day, I haven't watched this video that exists somewhere in the world. I think my mom has it in like a cabinet somewhere, of where I spoke in my high school about an independent study I did about rape. And I was with 2 other students, and we each talked about a different aspect of rape, myths, and realities. And even back then, I was always interested in what was true and what was a lie. What was actually true and what was stuff that we've just been perpetuating and buying as, oh, of course this. And it's like, is it really? Of course? Is it really? So I had this big year-long research study that I'd done. I had these other 2 colleagues that were fellow students that were counting on me. I had a big old PowerPoint behind me, a lecture hall with all that, you know, that diagonal, all the steps in front of you that you see all of the people, and you're like looking up and like, whoa, when is the end? And there were parents there, there were teachers there were other students there. It was called Presentation Day, when we present about this, whatever we did for our independent study over the course of the year. It's a big thing. And so for many of us, like maybe you've had this, where you had a presentation, a class, where you have a moment where you're performing on a stage and things like that. Maybe these small one-on-one interactions, like going on a date, feels like that for you, right? For each of us, we may have a different thing that may tap into the same energy. And so first, my friend Amanda presented, then my friend Tebecca presented. And as they're presenting and it's getting closer and closer to my time, I'm shaking in my seat. Everything in me is just vibrating and shaking and shaking and shaking. I wish I knew then what I know now about so many things. I would hope that we've all evolved since our high school years, right? But one of the things that was going on is I was picking up on all these points of views that people had about rape, about bodies, about, oh, wow, well, there are these teenage girls that are talking about it, some of which are the same ages as the children of the parents in the crowd. So now the parents are concerned for their daughters, right? And I'm picking up on all of this, not knowing it at the time. I was thinking it was anxiety. I was thinking that it was me not being able to speak in front of other people, all these things that we tell ourselves instead of knowing, okay, body, what am I aware of? What is not being said? What is this unseen element here? That goes into the fantastical, right? The seen and the unseen. Yeah, I saw parents. Yeah, I saw my parents. I saw my colleagues. I saw the content. We were really breaking down walls and talking about a lot of things that a lot of people were avoiding discussing that is very uncomfortable. And I got up there and I spoke to the crowd, and I was stuttering the whole time. My name, and it was just stuff would get stuck in my throat. And my dad, I remember to this day, he was like, I'd never seen you like that. I'd never seen you struggle to talk. And that was the first big public speaking engagement I had. It was very important to me. The topic was very important. I wanted to illuminate all these lies that people didn't realize about rape. And it was such a gift that I did that, and I researched that so in depth at that age, because I was raped myself years later, and I was able to facilitate myself out of a lot of the lies that I would have told myself if I hadn't done all that research and I hadn't gone into that depth of that topic. The other thing that I didn't know at the time that I wish I knew that would have helped immensely is asking myself, who does this belong to? Recognizing that I was picking up on all of those thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Recognizing that, man, if I could breathe and connect with my body and expand beyond all of that, and there's a lot of different ways of expanding. We can practice some of that if you would like. But one of the things that really benefited me was it actually was this invitation to be like, okay, this is challenging for me right now. How can I get better at this? How can I get really good so that this never happens again? Because I was pretty mortified. There's very few super embarrassing moments of my life. That was one of them. Again, remember, I have not watched that video since that presentation day. And yet now here I am, and I'm speaking on a podcast. I teach classes around the world. I meet new people and go to different networking events and do trainings all the time. And yeah, there are moments where I sometimes get a little bumpy and maybe stutter a little bit. But for the most part, I'm like, that happened, moving on. And I don't judge myself for it, which is one of the things that just makes it more and more difficult to show up, is if you judge yourself. If you judge how you've shown up so far, instead of being like, oh, that's perfect, given how much I was willing to show up until then. Okay, great. Now what am I going to do to develop this skill and get better and better at this? Versus like, oh, this is just who I am. This is just how it's going to be every time I go and do public speaking, right? What if we didn't accept the status quo and we actually started developing in the skills that we really like to develop? All right. So it's time for our second break of the show. When we return, we will discuss more ways in which we can use our fantastical voice to empower ourselves and to show up even more for our lives. And so you're listening to Choosing a Different Future show with Siris, myself, Siris, on the Inspired Choices Network. When we return, we will continue to discuss having our fantastical voice. We will be right back.
Most people haven't been taught how to listen and partner with their bodies in order to create lives that include clarity, pleasure, ease, and connection. Tuning in to Choosing a Different Future with Siris, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and resources on how to use your awareness of bodies and energy to your advantage. Siris is a family and child coach and therapeutic energy worker who will guide you to get clear and acknowledge what's brilliant, magical, and a gift about you.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is the Choosing a Different Future show with Siris. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. Connect with Siris through her website, empoweringlightlanguage.com, or send an email to empoweringlightlanguage@gmail.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, everyone. I am Siris Raquel Rivas-Verdejo. I'm Choosing a Different Future with Siris. Today, our show topic is having our fantastical voice. So before we went on break, we were discussing some of my interesting experiences with developing my fantastical voice and how it can connect to building confidence, building self-esteem, also being willing to communicate more effectively, both for the outside world and also for yourself. And so we're going to be talking about more how we can use this for our own benefit, our mindset, how we could use our fantastical voice to regulate our emotions and actually have more joyful living. It's interesting. I forgot to mention before the break that stuttering runs in my family, on my mom's side of the family. This is part of why I became a speech language pathologist. All of my uncles, my mom, my uncles, my grandfather, my maternal grandfather stuttered. They didn't have the benefit of a speech language pathologist. That was before it was really common in Puerto Rico, where I was born and where they grew up. And then my siblings needed speech therapy. My sister for stuttering. She had a very, very severe stutter, which is often the case for women. When it's less common in women, but when they do stutter, it's more severe usually. And then my brother, he needed it for his hearing loss. He has a profound to severe bilateral sensory neural hearing loss. And so he needed a speech language pathologist for learning how to advocate for himself, how to discriminate between sounds, how to read lips and get clearer and clearer speech. And he speaks really well. It's phenomenal. And one of the things that I also benefited from was I then could see how I was starting to use the evidence-based techniques that I learned in graduate school as a teenager and into my early 20s before I had taken all these classes to give myself some more ease with speaking. Sometimes it's slowing my speech rate because I think way faster than I can speak. I be way faster than I can speak. And so inviting my body to, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to slow down, I might slow down a little bit, but I also ask my body to catch up to me, especially when I'm not being transcribed, when, I'm not talking to people that English isn't their first language, and I need to maybe slow it down a little bit to give them time to process what I'm saying. But when I'm with my friends and family, I speak really, really fast. And instead of having those stuttering moments, I can ask my body to speed up to my speed instead of feeling like I have to slow down. Now, here's the other piece too. Part of communicating with ourselves is a willingness to receive more. So by having your fantastical voice, it's an invitation for you to receive more in all areas of your life. And a key component to receiving more is being willing to ask for help, ask for inspiration, ask for clarity, ask for ease, ask for whatever this thing that you've been asking for, ask for more money, ask for more time to do these things that you'd like to do. Whatever it is, asking for it instead of assuming before you even get to the ask, oh, well, why bother? It can't show up. There are things that I energetically and implicitly ask for, and there are things that I verbally and explicitly ask for back when I was 11 years old and my parents were getting divorced, back when I was 15 and on my own and living at a residential high school and super stressed and all my autoimmune stuff was coming out, asking when I was in my 20s, right after I had had multiple car accidents, was in chronic pain, had just been raped, was dealing with a breakup, was dealing with classes. There's different things I asked for in each of those moments, in each of those times of my life, that they started to show up, and they're showing up so much more. Some of them in just the last couple of years, and some of them right after I asked. And I get that if I hadn't been willing to ask for them, even if they were starting to show up, I don't think I would have recognized it. So asking is for receiving, but also for building up your confidence, because you're like, wow, if I asked for that and that showed up, I wonder what else I could ask for. I wonder what else I could create with the power of my fantastical voice. I wonder what you could ask for and then start to have showing up. And first it's these tendrils. First is these little peaks and little hints at them. They're like, this kind of, it has this. Is it showing up? Okay, wow, this seems like what I was asking for a bit. Okay, this. And you get closer and closer. And then you, even sometimes when you think it's already shown up, then this other greater version of it comes right after that. You're like, then this too? Oh, wow. Okay, leaning into that, I'll receive that. So one of the things that was a turning point for this, because I loved when people asked me for things. I loved when people asked me for help. I had this need to be needed for a very long time. I don't have that anymore. I'm like, please don't need me. You got this. I can assist you. I can have your back, but you don't need me. It's a very different energy. But for most of my life, at least for the first two to 3 decades of it, I needed to be needed. Who else could relate to this? Where you're like, I like giving. I like being of service to people. It gave me value. Now I recognize that my value is beyond that. And I don't need that to prove my value. I love helping people still. I don't need to do it to know that I'm worthy of being on this planet and I'm worthy to be someone's friend or be in a relationship with someone. A really great person, a mentor of mine, pointed out to me that if I was always doing everything for everyone, I was like, Siris to the rescue. Well, then I was unintentionally giving them the message that they were not capable of doing that. And that I was like, ouch, ooh, I don't want to send that message. I mean, for me, and I'm just recognizing this from the last couple of months. So this is another aha, because this person told me this years ago, and that's when I started to change my behavior around this. But I'm just getting another piece right now that part of why it was like, ouch, it was abuse. I was unintentionally abusing those people emotionally, mentally, verbally, depending on how my Siris to the rescue was showing up. And I didn't want to be an abuser. I already experienced enough abuse. I was like, I know what that feels like. I know what that creates. That's not me. So, okay, how do I get better at this? How do I get better at being someone's friend, being someone's companion, being someone's partner, being a professional, and not feeling like I had to help them out of like a compulsion, like push my help and assistance on them, push my advice and opinions on them. And so that was a big turning point for me, because then I got that I actually had true choice in how I showed up for people and how I could have their back. There were infinite ways of me doing that instead of the 2 or 3 ways that I'd been functioning from and considering up until then. And so for each of us, how we can have our fantastical voice and know when to speak up and give our opinion, and when it's time to shut up, or when it's time to wait for them to ask for our opinion. And even though there are people now that'll ask for my help and ask for my opinion on stuff, and I will ask my body and their body now before I say something. So how will this be received? Are they actually willing to receive this? In what way? What do they need me to say? What will create the most? And then given whatever awareness comes up from those questions, I may or may not give them what they're asking for. Because a lot of people will say, oh, what do you think about what I'm wearing, right? But they really just want you to say, oh, it looks great. They don't want you to point out that it's not as flattering on their butt, or it makes their shoulders look like, they're the Incredible Hulk, or these, the color isn't so great for their skin. They just want you to say it looks great. The same thing goes for business or relationships or anything like that. Oh, what do you think of my boyfriend? Okay, do they really want me to tell them what I really think? Or they want me to just sign off on their relationship, and then they go on their merry way and they're going to do whatever they want to do. We all know the people. We've all been those people in some area of our life. We just want someone to be like, oh, it's great. You don't really want to know their opinion. And so by having your fantastical voice with your body and other people's bodies, you'll know when to speak and when to not. And don't get me wrong, I still put my foot in my mouth every once in a while. I just did it this morning. I did it just this morning. And yet I also was speaking to someone that didn't even take it as seriously as I thought. I was like, oh, that probably wasn't the kindest way for me to say that. And they were like, I went and talked to them afterwards, and they were like, oh, it's totally fine. I didn't even think a big deal about it at all. So it helps that I'm also choosing to be around people that can receive my unique flair and flavor of communication. I'm not everyone's cup of tea. But that's the whole thing. I know my fantastical voice. I know that I'm very firm and very direct and forthright, but also very loving and caring. And some people just want a different combination of those things, or a whole different energy and vibe, and that's okay. Then they don't need to talk to me. That's fine, right? The other piece too that I would love to talk about is conflict and confrontation. For a lot of us, maybe we have ease with asking for help. Maybe we're totally fine with, public speaking. Maybe public speaking isn't even something you care about because you don't need to do it for your work or for your life. Okay, fine. Maybe you're fine and you can speak up to bullies, and your confidence, you find like you're pretty confident with most areas of your life. You don't really feel insecure about anything most of the time. Great. And then we get to conflict and confrontation. And that's where I find that you really start to see where you're truly confident or not, and where you're really willing to show up and have your voice or not, while honoring someone else's perspective. It's really, really interesting for me to look at this, because I thought that I handled conflict and confrontation really well until I realized where I could still work on this. One of the things for any of these areas, and there's so many more ways that we can use our fantastical voice. The fantastical voice discussion actually started from a month-long discussion that I facilitated as a part of the Academy for the Seen and Unseen. And the Academy for the Seen and Unseen is a whole series of groups and classes that empower people who would like to have their fantastical voice, would like to recognize that the seen and unseen are here contributing to us all the time, but they'd like to have more ease and clarity with it, and then use it for all these different areas of their life, from self-care to business to money to family to relationships, whatever it is. And And when we looked at Fantastical Voice, gosh, back in, it was, I think 2020, it was the summer of 2020 when we really needed Fantastical Voice. We delved into this, and one of the key pieces to this, I'm going to mention to you after this break, because I'd really like for each of us to have our own fantastical voice moving forward. And for us to know that by each of us having our fantastical voice in our own way, it actually contributes to more and more people having it in the world. And maybe it's just me because I care about people who are marginalized, who don't seem to have a voice as much. I would love that rippling out effect to occur more and more and more, and not to have it be where I have to talk to each person individually for them to have that fantastical voice. So if you could help me with that, I really appreciate it. So it's time for our third break of the show. When we return, we will continue to discuss our fantastical voice and how we can use it for conflict and confrontation. You're listening to Choosing a Different Future show with Siris, myself, Siris, on the Inspired Choices Network. When we return, we will continue to discuss having our fantastical voice. We'll be right back.
Most people haven't been taught how to listen and partner with their bodies in order to create lives that include clarity, pleasure, ease, and connection. Tuning in to Choosing a Different Future with Siris, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and resources on how to use your awareness of bodies and energy to your advantage. Siris is a family and child coach and therapeutic energy worker who will guide you to get clear and acknowledge what's brilliant, magical, and a gift about you. This is the Choosing a Different Future show with Siris. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. Connect with Siris through her website, empoweringlightlanguage.com, or send an email to empoweringlightlanguage@gmail.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, everyone. I am Siris Raquel Rivas-Verdejo on Choosing a Different Future with Siris. Today, our show topic is having our fantastical voice. And so before we went on break, we were discussing how we could potentially use our fantastical voice to have more ease and clarity when we're dealing with conflict and confrontation. And one of the things that is really important about this is starting with where you do have ease with it, and then generalizing to where you may need to develop this. So for instance, for me, I thought I was great at conflict and confrontation because I used to defend and speak for my siblings. There were a lot of people that had very interesting points of views about them having special abilities and special needs. And I would tout their praises, and I would see the gift that they were to my life and to the world. And I didn't like it, and I didn't appreciate it when people would talk about them as if they were less than, as if the world would be a better place without them, as if they weren't worthy of the sort of the activities and the resources and the time of the teachers and staff in their schools. They were probably going to have a harder time and be really limited and not be able to have their own apartments and their own jobs. And whatever these projections and expectations that they had, I would speak up for them. And then knowing now what I talked about before the break about I didn't have to go and speak for them all the time. Now they know how to defend themselves and how to speak up for themselves more and more. I got out of the way and I had their back, and I was like, if you need me, holla, I gotcha. But until then, you got this. And they started to develop how they could speak for themselves. So I thought, okay, I got this. I can speak up for them when some of our family members would belittle them or talk down to them or just be plain mean, like just really verbally and emotionally abusive. I actually would get pretty calm depending on the person. Maybe I would yell out a little bit, but I didn't feel like I didn't speak up. And what I've learned now is that it's not always about speaking up. It's not always about yelling. It's not always about defending and saying a certain point of view. Now I switched it over, and I learned when in the professional realm, when I again am working with children and families that are marginalized, that they're from different cultures, they're from different linguistic backgrounds, they're from different socioeconomic status, and I'm speaking on their behalf because they've given me that role. And I'm also inviting them to ask questions and asking them what they would like and getting their input. So I'm learning how to navigate and ask for all these different things. And it's not only about me speaking for them, it's also like, okay, hey mom, in this individualized education plan meeting, what questions do you have? I noticed that you might be a little confused, and I know that's a lot of information. Let's take a moment and what is it that you'd like more clarity with? And I would kind of create the stage verbally for then the parent to step up and ask the question that they obviously wanted to ask. The other thing, though, I realized that with that, it wasn't this automatic thing then to speak up. It wasn't this automatic thing to say whatever needed to be said. Just because something that you're aware of, you may need to be said, it may not be the time to say it. And so the other key thing to learn about with conflict and with confrontation is, when is it the time to have this conversation? When is it the time to say something, and when not? That's going to create the most for everyone involved. There's different kinds of confrontation. There's different kinds of conflict that we can be discussing on. And there's so many different ways that we can go. Unfortunately, we don't have time to get into all of them. But one of the key questions I would love for you to ask yourself is, what area of your life do you already speak up? Do you already have ease with knowing when to speak up and when to be quiet, and you fluctuate between the two to create more? And when is it where you're kind of unsure and you could add some more support to that and benefit from a little bit more, so maybe some coaching. Okay. Gosh, this is so much. We're running out of time, y'all. But I love this discussion. Can you tell? So one of the things I'd really love for all of us to look at is, I would love for people to speak up for themselves, no matter what life experiences that they've had. I'd love for them to be able to have true, comforting, nurturing silence with their minds, and have that peace and calm that provides such a beautiful platform for us to be able to have our voice. When you have all this stuff rattling around, it's a lot harder for you to know then, in the midst of all these voices in my head, which is the one that is going to speak up, and in what way, what's going to create the most. And so I would love for people to show up for themselves and for the futures that we would all like to see, you know? And we're going to continue this discussion actually in the next episode. It's called being a space of possibility with men. I love talking about this because I find that a lot of people, including men themselves, are having a lot of hate toward men, and not all men are any one thing, just like not all women are any one thing. And so the description for the next call, I'm going to read that to you right now. It says here, do you love men? Would you like to create a space with them and all of you? What if you could have a way of speaking to the space of possibilities with them beyond spoken words? There has been an interesting narrative going on about men for a long time, from women and also other men, that has been influenced by generational lies, institutional manipulation, and personal experiences, eclipsing what is possible. If you're someone who would like to not just get along with men, have sex with them, or marry them, and would instead like to go beyond that to receiving with them, raising them in an empowering way, and thriving with them without the weight of what people have considered or chosen before, this episode is for you. So we will be talking about that next time. Gosh, I'm really excited about this discussion. It's actually coming from a lot of writing that I've been doing and a lot of classes that I've been doing on this topic. And since I also do relationship coaching, it's one thing when you're with a man that would like to truly listen and improve in their communication, and you're with a woman that would like to truly communicate and listen and receive each other. Those are the people I work with. The people who aren't interested in that, they shouldn't work with me. But sometimes even with having that be the case, they don't really know how to go about doing that. And we all need some support sometimes. So catch us next week on Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern US. Thank you so much for being here. I've loved this discussion and hope to see you next week. Bye for now, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Choosing a Different Future show. Siris returns Fridays at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Mountain, and 7 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. Until then, keep choosing what will work for you and your body, your own unique way honoring what will work for you.